Welcome to Sleepcast, probably the most boring podcast in the world. Sleepcast is created to help you relax, slow down, and gently drift off to sleep. There's nothing you need to remember and nowhere else you need to be. Simply get comfortable, close your eyes, and allow tonight's quiet story to carry you away. And now, we hand things over to our two hosts for today's episode. Rest well and enjoy.
So I want you to picture this. It is August of 1923, right? And a 21-year-old kid steps off a train at Union Station in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have a studio. He doesn't have, like, a stable of beloved characters.
Usually like that.
Right. What he has is a cardboard suitcase, a single reel of a pilot film called Alice's Wonderland, and exactly $40 in his pocket.
Just $40. It is wild.
It really is. I mean, he was essentially this Midwestern transplant, fleeing bankruptcy and just banking everything on the wildest of long shots.
Yeah, and well, today, the company you built from that $40 dictates a massive, massive portion of global entertainment.
Oh, totally. It is a monolithic empire now.
Right.
But our mission today on this deep dive is to, dig through a mountain of historical archives, original contracts, and these corporate restructuring timelines.
To figure out how it actually happened.
Exactly. We want to understand the mechanics of that transformation.
Because the contrast between that $40 train ride and, the modern multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, it's staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
But when you synthesize these century-long archives, you realize the evolution isn't just a series of happy accidents.
Right. It was intentional.
Very.
Yeah.
Disney's absolute dominance is, it's really a masterclass in two very specific, very ruthless business strategies running in parallel.
Okay, lay them out for us.
So the first is a relentless drive for technological innovation, always separating their product from the pack.
Makes sense.
And the second is the absolute iron-fisted control of intellectual property.
The IP.
Exactly, the IP.
Well, I want to pull the listener right into that foundational moment because the sheer humility of it is just wild.
It really is.
So Walt Disney is coming off what he called, quote, good hard failures, unquote.
Right, with his Laugh-O-Gram studio back in Kansas City.
Yeah, that went under. So he arrives in Hollywood, and he needs capital.
Desperate.
So he pitches his older brother, Roy Disney, who is recovering from tuberculosis at the time.
Right, but Roy had a stable banking background.
Exactly. So Roy cashes in, he chips in $250, and they secure a $500 loan from their uncle, Robert Disney.
Yeah, and they literally build a camera stand out of spare parts in their uncle's garage.
A garage. I mean, you can't get more startup than that.
No, you can't. And that garage setup was the incubator for a document that changed Hollywood history.
Okay, what's the document?
Well, the archives show a simple 4-page contract.
Just 4 pages.
Just 4 pages. Signed on October 16th, 1923.
Wow.
Yeah, at 4406 Kingswell Avenue in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Walt and Roy signed a deal with a prominent New York distributor named Margaret Winkler and her colleague, Charles Mintz.
Right.
And the agreement was to distribute those Alice comedies.
Which, by the way, the Alice comedies are fascinating technologically.
Oh, totally.
Because Walt wasn't just drawing cartoons, He was compositing a live-action little girl into an animated two-dimensional world.
Right. It was this crazy optical illusion.
Exactly. It required meticulous timing. They were basically reverse engineering what early filmmakers were doing with double exposure.
Yeah, it was an early tech demo, really.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly labor-intensive.
I can imagine.
But it worked well enough to keep the lights on for a few years.
Right. They were surviving.
Yeah. But the critical inflection point, the moment that forged the modern corporate philosophy of Disney, that happened in 1927.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So the Alice concept was kind of running its course. Audiences were getting a bit tired of it.
Makes sense.
So Walt pivoted to a fully animated series and created a new character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Oswald, right.
Yeah, and Walt and his team produced 26 Oswald shorts. And they were a massive critical and financial hit.
So they finally have a real winner on their hands.
Exactly. So Walt travels to New York to renegotiate his contract with Charles Mintz.
And he's probably expecting a big payday, right?
Well, he was expecting a much larger budget per cartoon just based on their success.
Right. But imagine you stepping into that New York office, flush with the success of your first major hit, only to have the floor completely drop out from under you.
Oh, it was brutal. Mintz didn't offer a raise. He demanded a massive budget cut.
A cut.
Yeah, and then he dropped the real bomb.
Which was?
Mintz had gone behind Walt's back and secretly signed employment contracts with almost all of Walt's own key animators.
Oh, wow.
The distributor essentially staged a corporate coup.
That is so shady. But wait, how is that even legal?
Well, that's the thing. The leverage Mintz had was entirely legal, and it was entirely devastating.
Because of the contract.
Exactly. When Walt reviewed the fine print of his distribution contract, the reality set in. He did not own Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Margaret Winkler and Charles Mintz did.
Yep. The distributor owned the copyright. Mintz told Walt he could either accept the lower fee and work for him, or walk away and leave his hit character and his entire staff behind.
God, it's the ultimate creative trauma.
Truly.
I always think about it like, think about a young musician signing a terrible first record deal.
Oh, yeah. Classic scenario.
Right. So they pour their absolute soul into a multi-platinum album, and then they realize the record label owns the master tapes.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, the label is legally firing them from their own band.
That is exactly what it felt like.
That level of betrayal, it has to alter your entire worldview. But here's my question for you,
All right.
because I want to push back on the mythology a little bit here.
Sure, go for it.
If Mintz had just played nice-like, if Walt hadn't lost Oswald in such a brutal, humiliating way, would the Walt Disney Company have ever become the aggressive IP monolith we know today? Or, would they have just happily stayed a mid-tier animation vendor for distributors?
Honestly. Looking at the structural evidence of the era, they likely would have remained a vendor.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the 1920s, the studio system was heavily weighted toward the distributors and the theater chains.
Right. They held all the cards.
Exactly. Content creators were largely disposable.
Wow.
So the loss of Oswald was the crucible. It violently shook Walt out of the mindset of an artist and forced him into the mindset of a mogul.
He had to become a businessman.
He had to. The archive texts consistently point back to this single event as the birth of a non-negotiable corporate philosophy.
Which is?
Disney must unconditionally own everything it creates.
Own everything.
Right, because creative brilliance is merely a liability if you don't legally control the output of that brilliance.
The intellectual property is the only actual asset.
Exactly.
So, okay, Walt leaves New York on a train back to Los Angeles. He has no animators, save for his most loyal collaborator, Works, who refused to sign with Mintz.
Right. Oob stayed loyal.
He has no character. He has no revenue stream. He is desperate.
Completely desperate.
And out of that desperation, they sketch out a mouse.
They do.
But simply drawing a new character wouldn't be enough to survive, right? I mean, they needed a moat.
Yes.
They needed something the other studios couldn't easily replicate.
Exactly. And the initial attempts with the new character, Mickey Mouse, they actually failed to gain traction.
Right, because the first one was silent.
Yeah. Works animated a silent short called Plain Crazy. Distributors passed on it.
Just flat out said no.
Just said no.
No.
But Walt recognized a massive paradigm shift happening in the broader film industry.
Sound.
Yes. The Jazz Singer had just been released. Synchronized sound was suddenly possible.
But it was mostly viewed by the major studios as a passing fad, right? Or too technically cumbersome for animation.
Exactly. They didn't think it was worth the effort for a cartoon.
Well, let's break down why it was so cumbersome for animation specifically. Because it's wild.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Right. So with live action, you just record the actor talking.
Simple enough.
But with animation, you're dealing with 24 individual drawings per second.
Right.
So to sync sound, the composer has to mathematically calculate the tempo of the music to match the exact frame rate of the drawings.
Yeah, it is a grueling mathematical puzzle.
It sounds impossible.
Well, it required absolute precision. But Walt and Ub, they designed a third Mickey Mouse cartoon from the ground up, specifically to showcase sound.
And they use this new tech, right?
Yeah, they utilized a system called the Power Cinephone. And Walt literally sold his car to finance the recording sessions in New York.
He sold his car. The commitment is just insane.
He was all in. And the result was Steamboat Willie, which premiered at the Colony Theater on November 18th, 1928.
Such an iconic date.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a cartoon, It It was a demonstration of technical supremacy.
Because the sound effects, the music, the character movements, they were all locked in perfect unison.
Exactly. And that technological leap made Mickey Mouse an overnight sensation.
So they're saved.
Well, sort of. The cultural impact was huge, but the financial realities of running a studio were still pretty grim.
Oh, right, because animation was incredibly expensive.
Extremely. Which leads to this small moment in 1930 that quietly laid the foundation for the entire modern entertainment industry.
Oh, this is the pencil tablet thing, right?
Yes. So Walt is approached by a man in a New York hotel lobby.
Just a random guy.
Pretty much. And the man offers him $300 for the right to print Mickey Mouse's image on a run of pencil tablets for school kids.
And Walt needs the cash to make payroll.
Exactly. So he signs the license.
Okay, so he gets his $300.
He does. But the mechanics of that licensing deal are crucial. Initially, it was just a flat fee, right? $300.
Right.
But it triggered a realization about the elasticity of owned IP.
Elasticity. I like that.
Yeah, because if a character could sell pencil tablets, what else could it sell?
Anything, really.
Exactly. So within months, they hired an executive named Kay Kamen to aggressively manage licensing.
And they changed the model.
Totally. They moved from flat fees to complex royalty structures.
Wow. So they started taking a percentage of every single item sold.
Every single one.
Mickey Mouse dolls, dishes, toothbrushes, radios. I mean, they even launched a syndicated comic strip.
It was everywhere.
It's the accidental birth of merchandising synergy. I love this concept.
It's brilliant.
The movie advertises the toothbrush, right?
Yeah.
And then the toothbrush pays for the next movie.
Exactly. Prior to this, a film character lived exclusively on the silver screen. When the movie left the theater, the revenue stopped.
But the pencil tablet deal proved that IP could infiltrate the domestic sphere.
Yes, the character became a lifestyle brand.
But even with all those toothbrushes flying off the shelves, the fundamental economic model of making short films was still flawed.
Oh, deeply flawed.
Because you pour all this money into a 7-minute short, but the theaters only pay a tiny rental fee.
Right, because to the theater owner, it's just the appetizer before the live-action main event.
Exactly. So Walt realizes that to build a lasting empire, they have to become the main event.
They need a feature-length film.
A full-length animated movie.
Yes. Which brings us to the production of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937.
And everyone thought he was crazy.
Oh, universally. Within the Hollywood establishment, this project was derided as Walt's folly.
Walt's folly. That's so harsh.
It was. But the skepticism wasn't just financial, it was physiological.
Wait, what do you mean physiological?
Well, critics and executives genuinely argued that the human eye couldn't withstand watching bright, primary-colored animation for 80 minutes.
They actually thought that?
Yeah. They claimed audiences would suffer eye strain or simply walk out of boredom.
That is wild, but I guess nobody had ever done it before.
Exactly.
So put yourself in Walt's shoes during this production. The country is in the depths of the Great Depression.
Right.
The initial budget for Snow White was $250,000.
Which was a lot then.
But by the time they finished, it cost $1,499,000.
Astronomical.
That is an insane figure for the 1930s. He mortgaged his house. He took out massive loans.
He bet the whole farm.
If Snow White flopped, the bank wouldn't just take the movie, they would liquidate the entire studio.
Yeah, it would have been over. But he mitigated that risk by pouring the money into brand new technology.
Right, he had to make it look undeniable.
Exactly. The technological advancements in Snow White were designed specifically to overcome the audience's resistance to a long-form cartoon.
Okay, what was the biggest advancement?
The most significant was the invention of the multiplane camera.
The multiplane camera.
Yeah. So traditional animation was completely flat. It was just a character drawn on a piece of celluloid laid over a painted background.
So it looked like a two-dimensional stage play.
Exactly. There was no depth. But the multiplane camera was this massive vertical rig. I mean, standing several stories high.
Stories high, just to hold drawings.
Yeah. It allowed animators to place the background elements, midground elements, and foreground elements on entirely separate panes of glass.
Oh, I see.
Spaced inches or even feet apart. And the camera shot straight down through all the layers.
Okay, so what does that actually do on screen?
Well, when the camera moved, the The foreground elements move faster than the background elements. It's a phenomenon called parallax.
Parallax, right.
It gave the animation actual depth of field. It simulated the way the human eye perceives reality.
That is so smart.
Yeah.
And they didn't just stop at the camera tech, right? They also brought in live actors to perform the scenes on a soundstage before anyone drew a single frame.
Yes, live action reference.
Right. The animators studied the fabric physics, the weight distribution of the actors, the subtle facial tics.
They were obsessing over the details.
Exactly. They weren't just drawing gags anymore. They were animating gravity and emotion.
And that investment in realism, that was the difference between a novelty act and cinematic art.
And it paid off.
Massively. When Snow White premiered at the Carthay Circle Theater in Los Angeles, the response was completely unprecedented.
I read it became the highest-grossing sound film in history up to that point.
It did. But the true insight from the archives isn't just the box office gross.
What is it then?
It is the structural shift in the industry. Snow White proved that a fully owned animated IP could serve as the primary economic engine for a major studio.
It proved the whole thesis.
Exactly.
So fast forward a bit. Walt has conquered the feature film format. He has the merchandising pipeline flowing.
Yep.
But his ambition starts bumping up against the physical limitations of a movie theater.
He wanted more.
Right. And the archives note a very specific personal anecdote about this, which I love.
Oh, the Griffith Park story.
Yes. So Walt is sitting on a bench at the Griffith Park merry-go-round watching his two young daughters ride.
Right.
And the park is dirty, the parents are bored, just sitting on the sidelines, and he realizes there is a massive void in the market. He wants to take the pristine, emotionally resonant worlds he built on film and manifest them into physical reality.
A place where families could actually step inside the movies.
Exactly.
And that realization culminated in the opening of Disneyland in Anaheim, California.
July 17th, 1955.
Yep. And it was a $17 million investment.
Which, again, huge money.
Huge. But the brilliance of Disneyland lies in who Walt actually hired to design it.
Because he didn't hire architects, right?
No. He deliberately avoided traditional architects and amusement park operators.
Why?
Because they would have built a standard, grid-based carnival with a midway. That's all they knew.
Right, like a boardwalk vibe.
Exactly. Instead, Walt hired his own art directors and animators.
So by using filmmakers to build a physical space, didn't he essentially invent the architecture of immersive reality?
He absolutely did.
I mean, we talk about VR today, but he was building three-dimensional physical VR in the 1950s.
That's a great way to put it. He established an entirely new discipline called Walt Disney Imagineering.
Imagineering.
Right. The Imagineers applied cinematic techniques to physical space.
Like what?
Well, consider the layout of the park. They designed it around a central hub.
Okay, the hub.
Yeah, a concept spearheaded by Marvin Davis. In a traditional grid park, guests suffer from decision fatigue, and they easily get lost.
Because it's just a maze of paths.
Exactly. But the hub-and-spoke model operates like a visual compass.
And it utilizes what Walt called weenies, right?
Yes, weenies.
I just love that term. Visual magnets that draw the crowd's eye.
Precisely. So you enter Main Street, and your eye is immediately drawn to the Sleeping Beauty Castle at the end of the corridor.
You can't help but walk toward it.
Right. It creates an irresistible gravitational pull.
And then once you reach the hub...
Once you reach the hub, you can see the entrances to Adventureland, Frontierland, Fantasyland, and Tomorrowland.
all from one spot.
Exactly. The psychology is masterful. You never feel trapped. The architecture itself directs the crowd flow seamlessly.
Wow.
Furthermore, they utilized forced perspective on the buildings.
Forced perspective, like a movie set.
Just like a movie set. The ground floors are full scale, but the second stories are built at 5/8 scale, and the third story is at half scale.
Oh, so it tricks the brain.
Right. It tricks the brain into thinking the buildings are towering over you while still maintaining this very intimate, controlled atmosphere.
That is just brilliant. And the control extended to the staff, too.
Oh, absolutely.
They weren't employees, they were cast members.
Right. They were putting on a show.
Every trash can, every light fixture, every uniform had to organically belong to the specific narrative of that land.
Total immersion.
Right. I read that a cowboy from Frontierland was strictly forbidden from walking through Tomorrowland because it would break the cinematic illusion.
Exactly. It would ruin the movie, essentially.
But building this physical reality cost a fortune. I mean, $17 million. How did he convince bankers to fund an amusement park?
Well, he leveraged the newest distribution technology available at the time.
Which was?
Network television.
Oh, of course.
Walt struck a deal with ABC to produce a weekly anthology series, literally called Disneyland.
So he just named the show after the park.
Yeah, and the television show served two purposes. First, ABC provided the capital to finish construction of the park.
Okay.
And second, the show acted as a weekly, hour-long, primetime commercial beamed directly into millions of living rooms.
Wow. He used television to build the mythology of the park before the gates even opened.
He primed the entire country for it.
It is the ultimate closed-loop ecosystem. The TV show markets the theme park.
Right.
The theme park immerses the guest in the movie characters. The immersion drives the guest to buy the merchandise.
Yep.
And the merchandise funds the next movie. He created a self-sustaining corporate organism.
He really did. And the success of that organism provided the leverage for his final and honestly most ambitious project.
The Florida Project.
Exactly, because Disneyland was a massive hit, but it was completely landlocked by urban sprawl in California.
Right, all the cheap motels and diners popped up right across the street.
Exactly. Yeah. Walt realized he didn't control the environment outside his gates.
And he hated that.
He despised it. So, under absolute secrecy, he deployed shell companies to purchase 43 square miles of virgin swampland in central Florida.
43 square miles.
Yeah, it's an area twice the size of Manhattan.
Just the sheer audacity of buying 43 square miles in secret? He wasn't building a park, he was building a sovereign territory.
He was master planning Walt Disney World and, more importantly, his experimental prototype community of tomorrow.
AP saw it.
Right, EP-Sci-Te. But the original blueprint for EP-Sci was not a theme park.
Wait, really? What was it?
It was a functioning radial city with commercial centers, high-density housing, mass transit monorails, entirely controlled by the Disney Corporation.
He wanted people to actually live there.
Yes, he wanted to engineer a literal physical utopia.
That is insane. But the utopian vision abruptly halts, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
Walt Disney passes away in December 1966 from lung cancer.
It's a massive blow.
And he leaves behind this massive infrastructure. And for a decade, the momentum of his plans kind of carries the company forward, right?
Yeah, the momentum was strong enough for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Disney World opens in 1971. A modified theme park version of EP-Sci-Te opens in 1982.
But without the founder's creative engine, the company stagnates.
Deeply.
By the early 1980s, the animation division is producing box office disappointments, the cultural relevance is slipping, and Wall Street notices a vulnerability.
Oh, they smelled blood in the water.
So we reach this critical juncture in 1984.
Right.
What happens?
Well, the broader financial market realized that the Walt Disney Company was asset-rich, but cash poor.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
It meant the stock price was severely undervalued relative to the intrinsic worth of their actual assets, the theme parks, the film library, and that 43 square miles of Florida real estate.
Now I see.
And this triggered a genuine crisis, the threat of hostile corporate raiders.
Let's break down the mechanics of a corporate raider for a second for the listener, because it really explains the terror inside the Disney boardroom at that time.
Sure. It's pretty terrifying.
Right. So a raider buys up a controlling share of a depressed stock, and they don't care about the legacy or the art.
Not at all.
They seize the board, fire the management, and ruthlessly chop the company into pieces.
Exactly. They would have sold off the theme parks to a real estate developer, licensed the animation library to a rival studio, and just pocketed the massive profit.
Disney was literally on the verge of being erased as a unified entity.
It was terrifyingly close to happening.
Wow.
So the board of directors realized they needed aggressive, modern management to fend off the takeover.
And this brings in the new guys.
Yes. This ushered in the era of CEO Michael Eisner and President Frank Wells.
Right, and their mandate was to basically modernize the synergy machine.
Exactly. And one of their first major strategic moves was launching Touchstone Pictures in 1984.
With the film Splash, right?
Yes, with Splash.
Now, why a separate label, though? Why not just release it as a Disney movie?
Because the Disney brand was intrinsically tied to G-rated, family-friendly content.
Right, you couldn't put the Disney castle in front of a movie with adult jokes.
Exactly. The cultural tastes of the 1980s had shifted. Teenagers and adults were driving the box office now.
So Touchstone allowed them to pivot.
Yeah, it allowed the company to produce PG and R-rated content, capturing massive new revenue streams without diluting the pristine reputation of the core Disney brand.
Smart. So they expanded the product line.
They did.
But Eisner and Wells didn't stop at just making movies. They realized that content was only half the battle, right?
Right. Distribution was the other half.
So in 1996, they engineer what was then the second largest corporate transaction in United States history.
The acquisition of Capital Cities ABC.
For $19 billion.
$19 billion.
That is just a monumental number.
It was, but the financial architecture of that deal completely transformed Disney. They went from being just a content studio into a true media conglomerate.
Because by owning the ABC television network and its massive asset, ESPN,
Right, ESPN was huge.
Disney gained total vertical integration.
Exactly, they didn't have to pitch their shows to network executives anymore.
Because they owned the network.
They owned the pipeline into the consumer's home.
That's just wild. But while the corporate superstructure was expanding rapidly, the foundational engine Walt's original animation studio was stalling again.
It was.
As we move into the 2000s, traditional hand-drawn animation is struggling to compete against this new, radically disruptive technology.
Computer-generated imagery,
Yeah.
CGI.
Right. And this shines a massive spotlight on a small studio in Northern California called Pixar.
Now, the archives detailing Pixar's genealogy are just fascinating.
Tell me about it, because it didn't start as an animation studio, right?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It began in 1979 as the computer division of Lucasfilm.
George Lucas?
Yeah. It was run by a brilliant computer scientist named Ed Catmull. George Lucas wanted to explore digital film editing and rendering.
Okay, so how does it become Pixar?
Well, in 1984, they hired an animator named John Lasseter.
Who, ironically, had actually been fired from Disney, right?
Yes, he had. And then in 1986, Steve Jobs acquired the division from Lucas for $10 million.
Steve Jobs.
Yep, he spun it off as an independent hardware and software company.
But here's the crazy part. Disney and Pixar actually had a working relationship long before they were ever competitors.
They did.
Disney partnered with Pixar to develop the CAPS system.
Yes, CAPS.
Can you explain the mechanics of CAPS? Because it revolutionized how animated movies were physically made.
It really did.
It essentially replaced the whole ink and paint process Walt relied on, right?
Exactly. So CAPS stands for the Computer Animation Production System. And it digitized the entire back half of the animation process.
Okay, so traditionally, how did it work?
Traditionally, an animator drew a character on paper. That drawing was physically traced onto a clear celluloid sheet, or a cell.
Right.
Then painters manually filled in the colors on the back of the cell. The cell was placed over a background and photographed.
Very.
Incredibly manual. But CAPS eliminated the physical cell entirely.
Wow.
Animators still drew on paper, but the drawings were scanned into computers.
Oh, so the computer took over the coloring.
Yes. The coloring, the shading, the multiplane depth, the compositing, it was all manipulated digitally.
That must have saved so much time.
It did, and it allowed for infinitely complex camera moves and lighting effects that physical paint just couldn't achieve.
So CAPS was a massive leap. But Pixar wasn't satisfied just providing software to Disney, right?
No, they wanted to generate their own IP.
Which leads to 1995.
The release of Toy Story.
The world's first fully computer-animated feature film.
And it completely shattered the industry paradigm.
Totally. Now, for a decade, Disney distributed Pixar's films, taking a massive cut of the profits, obviously.
Right.
But Pixar owned the creative momentum.
They did.
So when Bob Iger took over as Disney CEO in October 2005, he looked at the internal data and realized Disney Animation was creatively bankrupt.
Right. Iger recognized a terrifying reality.
Which was?
The Disney synergy machine requires a constant influx of culturally relevant characters to feed the theme parks, the merchandise, and the cruise lines.
Right. If you don't have new characters, what are you selling?
Exactly. If the animation engine dies, the entire ecosystem eventually starves.
Wow.
And he determined that fixing Disney animation from the inside would take a decade they just didn't have.
So he decides to buy the solution.
Exactly. In 2006, Disney acquired Pixar in an all-stock transaction for $7.4 billion.
$7.4 billion. For a studio that only had a handful of movies,
Yeah.
I have to play devil's advocate here.
Okay, go ahead.
Was spending that kind of money a humiliating admission of defeat by Disney?
What do you mean?
I mean, they are basically telling the market, we completely forgot how to do the exact thing Walt built this company on, so we have to pay billions to acquire the people who still know how to do it.
Well, it was undeniably an admission that their internal processes had failed.
Right.
But from a strategic standpoint, it was a hyper-pragmatic calculation of the value of time.
The value of time.
Right. Iger understood that Pixar was the true technological, and creative heir to Walt's legacy.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, Pixar was pioneering 3D computer animation with the exact same obsessive dedication that Walt applied to synchronized sound and the multiplane camera.
Ah, I see the parallel.
And rebuilding that internal culture organically, that would require trial, error, and years of depressed stock prices.
That didn't have years.
Exactly. Buying Pixar was the instant acquisition of a functioning, proven creative engine.
And the mechanics of the deal also created this fascinating power dynamic.
Oh, with Steve Jobs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Jobs, who owned the majority of Pixar, received 2.3 shares of Disney stock for every share of Pixar he held.
Right.
The guy who bought a rogue computer division from George Lucas ended up becoming the single largest individual shareholder of the Walt Disney Company.
And he was sitting on his board of directors.
It's an unbelievable convergence of tech and entertainment.
It really is. And the Pixar acquisition was really the proof of concept for a radical new strategy.
Okay, what strategy?
Iger realized that in an increasingly fractured media landscape, the most efficient path to market dominance wasn't building new IP from scratch.
It was buying it.
Yes, it was aggressively acquiring generation-defining IP that already had deep emotional equity with the global audience.
And this philosophy launched the greatest period of consolidation in Hollywood history.
It completely reshaped the industry.
It really was a shopping spree.
Oh, yeah.
So, in 2009, Disney knocks on the door of Marvel Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this comic book company had clawed its way out of bankruptcy in the 90s, and they were just starting to self-finance their own movies. They had just released Iron Man.
Right.
And Disney buys Marvel for $4 billion.
A huge number.
$4 billion is massive, but you have to look at what they actually bought.
Right, because the financial community was initially super skeptical.
Really? Why?
Well, they thought, why is Disney buying a comic book company? But Disney wasn't evaluating Marvel based on comic book sales.
Of course not.
They were acquiring a deeply interconnected library of over 5,000 characters.
Spider-Man, the X-Men, Captain America, Iron Man.
Exactly. Characters with 70 years of established narrative history.
Wow.
Think about it. Disney possessed an unparalleled global infrastructure. Distribution, merchandising, physical parks.
And Marvel possessed an infinitely expandable universe of characters.
Right. Connecting the two yielded exponential returns.
I look at it this way. If you want to use a metaphor for you, the listener, don't look at it like a game of real estate monopoly where Disney is just buying up houses and hotels.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it like a tech company buying the foundational patent to the microchip.
But that's a great analogy.
Disney wasn't just buying a movie studio, they were buying a mythology engine.
A mythology engine, yeah.
They bought the cultural database of modern childhood.
That is exactly what it was.
And just 3 years later, in 2012, they proved the thesis again.
Lucasfilm.
They acquire Lucasfilm for another $4 billion.
Yeah. And the Lucasfilm acquisition brought Star Wars, Indiana Jones, the visual effects titan Industrial Light and Magic, and Skywalker Sound entirely under Disney's control.
It's just an insane amount of assets.
It is.
Yeah.
George Lucas stepped into a consultant role, and Kathleen Kennedy assumed the presidency.
Right.
And when you evaluate the scale of Lucasfilm, you are dealing with a universe of 17,000 characters spanning 20,000 years of canonical history.
See, that is what breaks my brain. How do you even begin to monetize 17,000 characters?
It takes infrastructure.
Right, because you can't just make a movie every year. You have to weave them into the physical reality that Walt pioneered in 1955.
Exactly. That is the crucial second phase of these acquisitions.
Yeah.
Disney immediately integrated this new IP into their physical spaces.
The theme parks.
Right. In 2019, they opened Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, man. Galaxy's Edge.
It was a 14-acre expansion in both California and Florida.
Ma-
And they didn't just build a ride. They designed a fully immersive settlement called the Blathspire Outpost on the planet Batuu.
And the mechanics of immersion in Galaxy's Edge are just stunning.
It's nest level.
Because the cast members aren't just wearing costumes, right?
Well, not at all.
They act as citizens of the planet. They are entirely ignorant of the world outside the park.
Right. If you talk about Earth, they act like they don't know what you mean.
Exactly. And they use an app on your phone, the Datapad, to let you hack droids and translate alien languages as you walk around.
Yeah, they blurred the line between physical architecture and digital interaction.
It is Imagineering dialed up to its absolute maximum.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the closed-loop system.
So they have the parks, they have the movies.
Right. but even possessing the most powerful mythology engines on Earth. Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm Disney recognized a massive vulnerability in the mid-2010s.
What was it?
Well, the traditional television ecosystem was collapsing.
Ah, right. Cord cutting.
Yes, cord cutting was accelerating. Consumers were abandoning the highly lucrative cable bundle in favor of digital streaming platforms like Netflix.
So the distribution pipeline that Eisner bought in 1996 with ABC was essentially rusting out.
Exactly. Disney realized that having the best IP in the world doesn't matter if another company controls the platform that delivers it to the consumer.
Right, because if Netflix controls the algorithm, Netflix dictates the terms.
Precisely. Disney needed to build its own digital moat.
So they needed their own platform.
Yes. But to build a digital platform capable of competing globally, they needed an unprecedented volume of content.
Which drove the final big deal.
Right. This existential need drove the acquisition of 21st Century Fox in 2019.
Okay, now, strictly analyzing the corporate restructuring within the archives, it is important to note the mechanics of this deal for clarity.
Definitely.
Prior to the acquisition, the Fox Corporation spun off its news and sports divisions into an entirely separate, independent entity.
Right. Fox News and Fox Sports were not part of the deal.
Exactly. Disney's acquisition was strictly focused on the creative assets.
Yes, they absorbed the 20th Century Fox film and television studios, the FX network, National Geographic, and crucially, Fox's controlling stake in Hulu.
That Hulu stake was key.
Huge. And the Fox acquisition added a massive influx of legacy IP, The Simpsons, Avatar, the Alien franchise, and it reunited the X-Men rights with Marvel.
Right.
But fundamentally, this $71 billion acquisition was a defensive maneuver.
Defensive? How so?
It was designed to secure a library massive enough to feed a direct-to-consumer streaming service. They were stockpiling ammunition for the streaming wars.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
And they fired the cannon on November 12, 2019.
The launch of Disney Plus.
Right, in the United States, Canada, and the Netherlands.
Yep.
And the mechanics of this launch completely upended Hollywood economics.
Completely.
Because instead of wholesaling their movies to theaters or licensing their shows to other networks for, guaranteed immediate cash,
Disney began hoarding everything.
Everything.
The shift to a direct-to-consumer model radically changed the financial metrics of the company.
Because it wasn't about the box office anymore.
Exactly. Success was no longer solely judged by weekend box office grosses. It was judged by average revenue per user, subscription growth, and minimizing churn.
And at launch, Disney Plus offered an incredibly aggressive price point.
Just $6.99 a month.
It's crazy. They offered nearly 500 films and 7,500 episodes of television.
An unbelievable amount of content.
And they bundled the heavy hitters. You open the app and you see the distinct tiles, right? Yeah. Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, National Geographic.
Right there on the home screen.
They even launched with massive theatrical budget original programming like The Mandalorian, proving that television and film production values were now indistinguishable.
It was a massive flex.
It really was. I want you to stop for a second, you, the listener, and just reflect on the historical timeline we've just unpacked.
It's quite a journey.
We started with a 21-year-old kid in 1923, right? Signing a contract on a desk in a real estate office, praying he could sell an optical illusions silent cartoon.
With $40 in his pocket.
Right. And today, that exact same corporate entity manages a digital platform that beams nearly a century of human culture, mythology, and storytelling directly into a rectangle sitting in your pocket.
The evolution is just profound.
Profound is the word.
Because if you synthesize the entire century, every major corporate milestone connects directly back to that brutal lesson of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit in 1927.
The trauma of losing his creation.
Yes. Walt learned that creative output is meaningless without structural ownership.
Right.
And the modern Walt Disney Company followed that lesson to its absolute inevitable conclusion.
They owned it all.
They didn't just protect their own IP. They engineered the financial capability to acquire the creative output of Steve Jobs, George Lucas, and Stan Lee.
Wow.
And through Disney Plus Eric, they eliminated the middleman entirely. They own the IP and they own the infrastructure that delivers it.
It is the flawless execution of those two strategies you established at the beginning.
Relentless technological innovation.
And the absolute control of intellectual property.
Exactly.
We've traced the journey from the camera stand in the uncle's garage through the massive gamble of the multiplane camera on Snow White, the invention of physical immersion with Disneyland, the corporate defense mechanisms of the 80s, the billion-dollar acquisitions of our cultural mythologies, all the way to the algorithmic dominance of Disney plus J.
The archives paint a very complete picture of business evolution.
They really do.
But as we conclude this analysis, there is a lingering concept worth deep consideration.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think back to Walt's original thesis for Imagineering.
Right, the blending of science, art, and creative imagination to dictate a physical environment.
Right. Well, today, Disney possesses the technological capability to build entirely immersive physical realities like Galaxy's Edge, where the sights, sounds, and narratives are tightly controlled. But simultaneously, through the algorithms of Disney Plus and Hulu, they meticulously curate the digital media diets of hundreds of millions of people.
They control the physical space and the digital headspace.
Exactly. Which raises a fundamental question about the nature of the company today.
What's the question?
Are they simply an entertainment conglomerate?
Yeah.
Or, a century after that 4-page contract was signed on Kingswell Avenue, have they amassed enough cultural, technological, and architectural power to effectively serve as the architects of our modern shared reality?
Are they the architects of our shared reality?
Wow.
Think about the sheer volume of our cultural shorthand, right? Our heroes, our metaphors, our childhood memories. All of that is legally owned and distributed by a single corporate entity.
It's a staggering thought.
It really is. So to the listener, as you go about your day, the next time you tap that streaming app on your phone or see a child wearing a pair of mouse ears.
Think back to the guy with the cardboard suitcase.
Exactly. Think back to the guy at Union Station. Think about the $40 gamble that literally reprogrammed modern culture. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
And that brings another quiet episode of Sleepcast to an end. Thank you for spending this time with us. We hope our two hosts helped you relax, slow your thoughts, and perhaps drift gently off to sleep. New episodes of Sleepcast are released every day, 7 days a week, all year round. Follow Sleepcast on the podcast app you are using now, so new episodes are added automatically, and you can be notified whenever another wonderfully boring story is released. Until next time, sleep peacefully and good night. Sleepcast, probably the most boring podcast in the world.